Now, what's fascinating to me is that the founders used the word self-evident to talk about these truths, that you have the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the consent to be governed. Because if a truth is self-evident, do you need to say that it's self-evident? No, it's so self-evident, you don't need to say, oh, this is self-evident, by the way. And it was clearly not self-evident because before the founding of America, these rights were not practiced in any form of government anywhere in the history of the world. Furthermore, this self-evident collection of truths apparently wasn't even self-evident to our founders. Because for 90 years after this document was signed, slavery was still legal in the United States. For 145 years after this document was signed, women were denied the right to vote. So the people who found these truths self-evident struggled to implement and practice what was self-evident to them. So if it clearly wasn't self-evident, and if they didn't apply it, why did they call this collection of truths around individual rights to be self-evident? The answer had everything to do with their cultural moment. Let me explain with an illustration. Sociologists will tell us that as human beings, if we're going to thrive and flourish in our humanity, we need to figure out how to strike a balance between two opposing values: living in community, yet maintaining autonomy. As human beings, we're made for community. We need relationship. We need affirmation. We need love. We need to feel belonging. At the same time, we're individuals. You were made in God's image. You are God's workmanship. You need to be free to think your own thoughts and to make your own self-determining decisions. And we need to strike a balance between these two juxtaposed values. Well, in the ancient world, long before America came along, societies leaned heavy into community instead of autonomy. They had to. The ancient world was a very dangerous place. If you didn't have your family, if you didn't have your tribe, you might not survive. So it made sense in an ancient world that people leaned heavily into community. But in the Western world, all that began to shift in the 16th century with the Protestant Reformation. Before the Protestant Reformation, there was one Christian church in Europe. It was the Roman Catholic Church. And the Roman Catholic Church taught that the only way you can be saved is to be a member of good standing of the church. You had to belong to this community or you could not be saved. The Protestant reformers came along and said, no. They reintroduced the biblical idea that you're not saved by belonging to a community. You're saved because you, as an individual, have faith. You are saved because you have faith. It's by faith alone, not by belonging to a certain community. Well, in the aftermath of the Reformation, violent and bloody wars erupted throughout Europe. And the reason why was because people still believed that if a nation, a community, was going to hold together, it needed a common faith practice. A common religion was the glue they believed that would hold society together. So there were wars waged within countries and against other countries about what would be the official state-run church in order to hold communities together. Well, when people saw all the bloodshed that was happening over this, thinkers like John Locke began to emerge and said, what if there was another way to have community where we didn't all have to belong to the same church? What if there was a way to govern where the church wasn't involved and people could be free to choose whatever church they wanted to be part of? And so John Locke thought, what if we had government systems that were built on the consent of the people rather than subjects who have to do the will of the king because of when and where they were born? What if we had citizens who had certain rights as individuals? Well, this is what we call political individualism. Political individualism says individuals do have rights and they do have the consent to be governed, but they want to be mindful that we also need the community to thrive and flourish and do well in life. Now, this was the cultural moment into which our founders were born. They saw what happened when there was heavy community and light autonomy. They saw the devastation that it wreaked on humanity and how it totally eroded people's freedoms. So in their cultural moment, they said, what we need is a government that is by the people, of the people, and for the people. Not for the individual, not by the individual, by the people. Of the people, for the people. So it was a government that ensured individual rights, yet promoted the stability of society, the community. And this was basically how America operated all the way up until the Second World War. People had political rights. Everybody gets to vote. Everyone's view is important. Everyone should have equality. Yet, there was also an understanding that we need the community, and certain rights, certain freedoms need to be restrained for the benefit of the well-being. I have rights, but I have a family to look after. I have rights, but my neighborhood is important. I have rights, but my church is important. My country is important. You see, people in an age of political individualism thought deeply when the question was posed, or the statement was posed, ask not what you can do, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And this balance is the reason why we call the greatest generation the greatest generation. As individuals, they felt a deep responsibility to uphold the rights, not just of the American community, but the communities of the world, to make sure that all the communities had autonomy. It was a balance built on responsibility and obligation. Well, after World War II, this balance began to shift. And there were a few cultural forces that drove it. The first one was materialism. You see, after the war, all these GIs and soldiers came home and they needed jobs. And all these factories that had been part of the war effort needed to be repurposed, and so we used them to make clothes irons and washing machines and televisions and automobiles. And at the same time, our nation built more infrastructure like bridges and interstate highways. As a result, people who used to sit on their front porch and talk to their neighbors could now just watch TV in their living rooms. And people who used to sit outside in the yard and do laundry and talk now could do all their laundry in their own home. And people who used to stay in their own community for vacation now could hop in their car and travel on the interstate and be free and autonomous. It used to take a village and an extended family in a neighborhood to raise children. Now, you can just do that with the nuclear family. And it's no surprise that materialism eventually gave way to consumerism. Consumerism is a mindset that says, everything is here for me. I gave you money, so now you owe me things. I paid my taxes, now my government owes me some things, right? Or the corporation owes me some things. It used to be in the greatest generation that if you had a job, you would likely have your entire career with one corporation. But today, it's only as long as it benefits me that I'll stay with this company. The other thing that really pushed things towards the autonomy end of the scale was the sexual revolution. You see, before the 1960s, and especially before World War II, sex was simply a natural appetite. After the sexual revolution, sex became part of your identity, part of who you were as an individual. In fact, think about how fundamental this shift was. Before World War II, the purpose of making money and the purpose of having sex was all about community. You made money to provide for your family, to pay your taxes, to be a good citizen, to help the economy. After World War II, you made money to build a sense of identity. Before World War II, sex was about creating family, having and raising children, fostering intimacy with your spouse. After the sexual revolution, sex became about your identity. So these forces kept shifting us more and more towards not political individualism, but expressive individualism. The modern idea of American freedom, which is a far cry from what the founders ever envisioned. Because the modern ideal of expressive individualism is that I am free to do whatever I want to do, and no one has the right to tell me other. Now, there's a progressive version of this and a conservative version of this. The progressive version of this has to do with sexuality and gender. You are free to choose to be whatever you want to be sexually or gender, and no one can tell you different, and you have to accept that. The conservative version of that says, you better not tell me what I need to believe. I'll decide for myself what I'm going to believe. But both grow out of autonomy. Okay, here's another example. Progressives say we need to cancel student loans because we need to help these individuals be more autonomous to live their lives. Conservatives say, I want to respect their autonomous decision that when they freely took out that loan and they can repay it. Now, just to be clear, I know that I totally mischaracterized your side, but I got the other side right. I know. So don't send the email. I already know I did that. I'm just making a point. The point I'm making is both modern conservatism and progressivism are growing out of this paradigm. The modern American no longer feels a sense of duty to the community, but our idea of freedom, our definition of freedom has shifted and has become all about being an autonomous self, an autonomous individual. And when you build a society that is a bunch of autonomized individuals, a bunch of sovereign nations of one, not only will you have a divided society, but you will have a recipe for anxiety.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out that last clip. My name is James and I serve as the Digital Media Director at Hope Church. If you're interested in exploring more about this topic, just click the link down in the description. But we also wanted to take some time to personally invite you to come join us for our next live stream that's going to happen right here on YouTube starting at 8:25 a.m. Central. You'll be welcomed by our on-air host who will guide you through that day's experience. We have chat hosts ready to answer any questions that you might have, and we would just love for you to come be a part of our growing online community. But the real highlight is that we get a chance to meet you. So if you're interested in joining us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get notified when we go live this Sunday. I cannot wait to hang out with you, and we'll see you there.